All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving deep into the Midnight Library. This book by Haig, oh man, it really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about what your life would be like if you had made different choices? Like what if you took that other job or moved to that other city?
Definitely. Who hasn't?
Right. Well, this book takes that idea and runs with it. It's all about a woman named Nora Seed, and she's given the chance to explore different versions of her life based on all the different paths she could have taken.
I see, like a choose-your-own-adventure, but for your entire life?
Exactly. It's like her own personal midnight library where every book is a different life she could have lived. What would your midnight library look like?
It makes you think, right?
Absolutely. It taps into that universal, that curiosity we all have about the roads not taken. And Haig weaves it all into this really captivating story about Nora, who's, well, she's at a pretty low point when we meet her.
Yeah, she's feeling like she's messed up pretty much everything. Like all the best possibilities for her life have just vanished. Right. It's kind of a bleak starting point, but I think so many of us can relate to that feeling of if only.
Totally. That feeling of regret, that maybe things could be so much better if we had just made different choices.
Exactly. And that's where this midnight library comes in. It gives Nora this almost like a dreamlike opportunity to actually try on these different versions of her life, each one branching from a different decision.
So she could see what her life would be like if
Yeah.
she had become, I don't know, a famous musician instead of...
Or like a scientist exploring the Arctic, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. The possibilities are endless, which is kind of mind-blowing. But here's the thing.
What's that?
She goes into all these different lives thinking she'll find the perfect one, right? Like the one where all her dreams came true.
Oh, I see. Like that fairy tale idea of happily ever after.
Exactly. But, well, that's not really how things work out in the Midnight Library, is it?
Not quite. That's where the book gets really interesting, I think. Because Nora discovers that even in these seemingly, idyllic lives, there's still challenges. Heartbreak. Sadness.
So it's not about finding the perfect life.
No, and I think that's a key takeaway. It's like the book is shattering this illusion we often have that happiness is all about external things.
Like getting that dream job or finding the perfect partner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even when Nora has fame, fortune, love, it doesn't automatically equal contentment.
Wow. That's a powerful message, and it really makes you think about how we define happiness, doesn't it? We always think, if only I had this, then I'd be happy.
Right, and the book is saying, hold on a second, it's not that simple.
So if it's not about achieving some specific outcome, then what is it about? What does the Midnight Library have to say about finding true happiness?
Well, it's interesting, because the book connects this idea of happiness to some bigger questions about, well, mental health and finding meaning in life. It doesn't shy away from difficult topics like depression and that feeling of emptiness, even when, on the surface, things seem to be going well.
That's pretty heavy stuff. But I'm curious, how does the book tackle these themes without feeling, I don't know, too preachy or negative?
Well, that's where Haig's skill as a writer really shines through. He uses Nora's journey as this powerful metaphor for, the struggles we all face. He doesn't give easy answers, but he encourages us to see things from a different perspective.
So instead of chasing some perfect life out there, we need to figure out how to be happy in the life we've got.
Yeah, and I think that's where the real magic of this book lies. It's not about finding the perfect life. It's more like finding the perfect way to live this life.
I like that. Finding the perfect way to live. It's less about these big dramatic changes, right? And more about those smaller, everyday things that can make a difference.
Absolutely, and that's where the idea of choice comes into play. Every time Nora tries out a new life, she's making a different choice. And each one leads to a different set of consequences. But here's the thing. No matter how perfect a life seems, none of them totally satisfy her.
She doesn't find that one perfect life and then just, lives happily ever after.
Nope, not at all. And I think that's really important. The book isn't saying, ditch your current life and go find a different one. It's more about finding those things that make you feel, truly alive within the life you have.
So what are those things? What does the book say about how to find that kind of, deep down happiness?
Well, it really emphasizes being present, truly present. Nora realizes that happiness isn't about reaching some far-off goal. It's more about being in the moment, appreciating the simple things, those little joys.
That reminds me of that scene where she becomes a beekeeper in one life. It's not glamorous or anything, but she finds a lot of peace and purpose in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's about connecting with nature, caring for something. There are all these moments throughout the book where Nora finds joy in unexpected places.
Sharing a meal with loved ones, watching a sunset, those kinds of things.
Yes, those moments, they're there in every life. It's just about noticing them, being open to them.
Right, like wake up and pay attention. The beauty and the meaning are already there. But it's more than just noticing them, isn't it? It's about actually doing things, taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. The Midnight Library is not about just sitting back and letting life happen. It's about making choices, following your passions, actively creating a life that has meaning for you.
Okay, so it's not about finding the right life in the library, but about finding the right what perspective in your own life.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. The library, with its infinite possibilities, is like this big metaphor for the choices we have, every day. And it shows how even small choices can have ripple effects, leading us down different paths. But no matter what path you choose, there will be good times and bad times. It's up to us to find the meaning, to make the most of it.
That's really empowering. Like it's saying you have more control than you think. You can shape your own experience.
Exactly. And that's such a hopeful message for anyone who feels stuck or full of regret. It's never too late to change your outlook, to find new meaning in the life you already have.
It's really making me want to finish reading this book. So does Nora, like actually find her way out of the library.
She does. But I won't spoil the ending. Let's just say it ties everything together beautifully.
All right, you've convinced me. I've got to finish reading it.
You won't regret it. It's one of those books that just stays with you.
I love books that make you think about the big questions, your own life, your choices,
Mm.
what makes you happy.
Me too. It's comforting in a way, knowing that we're all kind of wrestling with these same questions, trying to figure out what it means to live a good life.
So before we wrap things up, I'm curious. What do you think sets the Midnight Library apart from other stories that play with this idea of seeing how your life could be different?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it's the depth and the nuance that Haig brings to the story. It goes beyond the simple what if and really digs into the emotional side of things. The regret, the complexity of making choices.
Yeah, it feels very real and relatable. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not pretending that life is easy or that there's some simple formula for happiness.
Right. And I think that's why it resonates with people. It feels genuine. It makes you feel okay about your own messy, imperfect life.
And he manages to weave all these big philosophical ideas into a story that's just, well, it's beautifully written and it pulls you in emotionally. It doesn't feel preachy or anything.
I agree. He's really good at exploring complex themes in a way that's easy to understand, but still makes you think. And there's this subtle humor throughout the book that makes it, I don't know, more enjoyable to read.
Oh, I love that. It keeps the book from getting too heavy. So,
Mhm.
we keep coming back to this metaphor of the library. And it's just such a striking image, isn't it? All those possibilities. Kind of overwhelming, actually.
It is, and I think that's deliberate. Life itself can feel overwhelming sometimes. So many choices, so many paths.
For sure. So how do we deal with that? How do we make choices without being, like, totally paralyzed by the fear that we're missing out on some other better life?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't know if there's a simple answer, but I think the Midnight Library gives us some clues.
Like what?
Well, it reminds us that there's no one perfect path. Every choice comes with trade-offs, good and bad. So it's less about finding the right path and more about, I guess, accepting and embracing the path you're on.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to think that there's this perfect path out there, and if we just make all the right choices, everything will be great. But life doesn't really work that way.
Exactly. And that's okay. Those unexpected twists and turns are often what make life interesting. They make us grow and learn.
So how do we get better at accepting that?
Hmm.
Letting go of the regret, the what ifs, and just embracing the life we have, even if it's not perfect.
That's such an important question, and one that I think the book offers some really good advice on. One thing that really stuck with me is the importance of gratitude. Taking the time to appreciate the good things in our lives, even the small ones, it can make such a difference. It's like we shift our focus, from what's missing to what we already have.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the negative stuff. But when you actively practice gratitude, it really does change how you see things.
Exactly. And another big thing is finding meaning and purpose in our lives. It doesn't have to be some grand, huge thing. It could be our relationships, our work, our hobbies, even just helping other people.
Yeah.
connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
It's interesting because when I think about the different lives that Nora explores in the book, the ones that seem to bring her the most joy aren't always the ones with fame or fortune. It's the ones where she feels like her life has meaning, like she's making a difference.
That's so true. It really shows you that true happiness comes from doing things that align with our values and finding something that gives our lives meaning.
There's that quote by Viktor Frankl: man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life. It's like we all have this deep need to feel like our lives matter.
That's a great connection. And I think the Midnight Library really speaks to that idea that finding meaning is crucial for a fulfilling life.
So how do we find that meaning? Is it something that just happens to us, or do we have to actively search for it?
That's a tough one. I think it's a little bit of both. Sometimes meaning finds us in unexpected ways, like through a random encounter or a new experience,
Hmm.
you know? But I also think we can actively create meaning by following our passions, doing work that feels meaningful, nurturing our relationships.
The book also talks a lot about living in the present moment.
Right.
It's easy to dwell on the past or worry about the future, but real happiness is about being here now.
Absolutely. Things like meditation or even just paying attention to your senses can help you stay present and appreciate the little things.
Like learning to slow down and savor those moments that we usually just rush through.
Exactly. And when you focus on the present moment, those thoughts about the past or the future, they quiet down a bit.
For a book that deals with some pretty heavy stuff, I'm really struck by how hopeful The Midnight Library is. It would have been easy to make it dark and depressing, but Haig chooses to focus on the positive things: the power of choice, the importance of perspective, the idea that we can find happiness even when things are tough.
I agree. It's a book that celebrates our resilience and reminds us that we always have the power to choose how we react to challenges.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into The Midnight Library. I feel like we could talk about this book for hours.
It's been a pleasure talking about it with you. It's one of those books that you can revisit again and again and always find something new.
And to our listeners, I want to leave you with this thought. If you could step into your own midnight library and try on a different version of your life, what would you choose? And more importantly, what's one small thing you can do today to make that vision a reality? Remember,